Welcome back to 4-Minute Film School, guys. My name is Kevin. So glad you're here to join us. I'm so stoked to get into this episode. Today we're going to be lighting a big area. We're having an actor do kind of a one take through a couple different rooms, and we have to figure out how to light each room consistently throughout the entire one take. I cannot wait to get into this. I'm going to show you how to do this. All right, guys, let's jump into it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Let's get it. Okay, let's get it. So the concept and the story behind our shoot today in this scene is we kind of have like a detective or private investigator, kind of like a Jessica Jones type, walking through like a private estate that's been abandoned. It's gonna be nighttime, it's gonna be really dark, really moody. We're gonna use some ambient moonlight in there, but she's gonna be kind of looking around a few different rooms until she lands in this one spot where she's gonna find a little surprise, but stay tuned to find out what that is. As we do the 180, we kind of back up a little bit and having foreground, like even if it's just some of this stuff that we kind of follow her through, and it's like we're passing through as she walks and we're like passing through the foreground. So today is gonna be a little bit of a tricky shoot in that there's a lot of moving parts. First of all, it's a one take, and we're lighting for a big area. Camera's gonna be moving from room to room to room without cutting once. And so everyone kind of needs to understand all the things that go into it, all the movements, where the lighting's gonna be. Something I really love to help the crew kind of understand and kind of get a vision of what the shot's gonna look like is I use an app or an electrical viewfinder called Lightbridge. And this app is awesome because you can dial in the exact camera, the sensor size. You can even dial in the anamorphic aspect ratio that you're gonna be shooting in, which we're shooting in anamorphic today, so Lightbridge helps with that. So what I do is I take my viewfinder and I kind of plot out where we're gonna be moving, and I move throughout the entire scene and I record it, and I can show the entire crew exactly what we're doing, where we're moving, where the lights need to be, where the blocking's going to be, and it gives everyone just kind of an understanding of kind of how the whole scene's gonna play out. So our location today is MagArt Studio in downtown LA, and the reason we chose this location was because a lot of the set design was already kind of there. It already was made for us, so it kind of made our job easier. We knew that this scene in particular had a lot to do with lighting, a lot of rigging, so we really wanted to focus more on the lighting and making sure that was dialed in and not have to worry about creating a whole set. So this location works a lot. We're really going for kind of an abandoned type of estate where there's no one around. It's going to be very dark. And this location just works perfectly for that.
Oh, sorry, you're not the person I'm looking for.
You see what I mean? On cue. So one of the most important and often overlooked elements that go into great cinematic images is the art direction, the production design, everything you see that's not the actor or the lights being shown. As you can see, we've got sheets kind of over a bunch of different things to kind of really sell the abandonment of this place, and it's just left here. When our actor points the flashlight at some of these sheets, it's gonna bounce right back at her, kind of exposing her a little bit more. And that's really important when you're doing dark, low-key scenes, is making sure you can see stuff. You don't want it so dark that you can't see your character or your actors. You wanna be able to have some sort of way to kind of give them some light and some definition. It's great production design, it's super smart, and we're kind of utilizing everything we can to make a great image. To add a little bit more spice to this and to really sell that we're in an abandoned estate, the art director, Day, she hooked it up with her own concoction, which is basically compressed air mixed with chalk. And what this does is it creates these little dust particles that you can actually see. It's not so much haze, it's not so much fog, it's thicker particles that are in the beams of light. And it's also creating this volumetric lighting where you get to see the directionality of light. All right, guys, check this out. I want to show you our camera package, but something's kind of interesting with it. It's all bagged up, and usually I see this when it's raining outside, but we're not outside, we're in an interior. And the reason why we have this bagged up, firstly, is because we're gonna be using a substance in the air, and that's why we have it bagged up. We don't want to necessarily get any of that chalk particle stuff or any of that substances into the vents or in the little cracks of the camera. We don't want to take any sort of risks. We want to protect it at all costs. So that's why we have it all bagged up from head to toe. It looks kind of funny, but it's well worth it than having something damaged on set, especially of this kind of caliber. So it's hard to see right now because we've got it all bagged up, but the camera package we're shooting on today consists of a few different components. First of all, the main thing is the C500, the new Canon C500 Mark II, full frame, beast of a camera. I love this camera so much. And we've paired the C500 Mark II with the Kowa anamorphics. This glass is probably some of my favorite glass that I ever get to shoot with. This scene has a lot of flashlights being pointed directly at the camera. In fact, we're tracking in front of an actor who's going to be walking around kind of in the dark, looking with her flashlight, and the reflection of that flashlight hitting this glass is going to create great anamorphic flares. The reason I love this Kowa anamorphic in particular is because, you know what, the flares aren't too in your face. They're not too punchy. They're just subtle enough to give you that anamorphic flare, but they're not kind of distracting from the rest of the image. So we are lucky enough to have Zach back on set with us today. Welcome back, Zach. Zach is an awesome Steadicam operator. I can't wait to see what he does, but today's a little bit tricky. It's not as easy as it sounds to do a oneer, especially with all the rooms that we're kind of gonna be moving through. Kind of talk to us about how you navigate kind of a oneer and going through complicated setups like this one.
Yeah, of course. So first you'll start with the story. We'll get the story beats down, whether that's for this scene, we're starting with a woman coming out of a door with a flashlight and then ending looking at a cake. And so those are our story beats, and then we fill in the in-between. So she looks around at one point, she comes around a corner, and there we go. We have 4 story beats for that. And then for each one, we'll go around with a tool, say the Artemis or say the camera, and we'll look at how the frame size is working with different lenses. So we've chosen a 40mm anamorphic for this one because it fits our needs for those certain shots and angles. And then we'll go and we will practice the move both with the talent and with you, and we will see where we need to place the lights, what's in frame, what we need to move around, what's in my way physically, maybe a chair, maybe a doorway, and someone will spot me through those. And then we'll see, okay, these lights are out of frame, the talent can move within the frame now, this lens is working for us, and these story beats are hitting with the certain movements, and then we can go and practice the move until we get all the tweaks down.
That sounds awesome. It's almost like you're kind of on a 2-step dance. You're kind of dancing around the scene. So it looks like we have a ton of lights set up already. Usually we kind of follow the scheme of like key light, backlight, practicals, like what's the formula for lighting a face? But this is a little different in that the nature of this shoot is more so lighting for a big space, right? We're lighting for a few different rooms that our actor is going to be traveling through. And so the name of the game is continuity and making sure that our character is defined in a low-key scene. So with me I have
Robert McQueenie.
Robert McQueenie, the man, the myth, the legend. Robert, let me ask you, talk to me about this first setup. We have obviously a bunch of rooms, but we have our first setup in here. Talk to me about what's going on in here.
So here we have a 600D with a Leica lens attachment shooting into a CRLS 3. One of the cool things about the CRLS mirrors is they have 5 different levels of diffusion. And so, you know, starting with 0, which is pretty much kind of closer to a mirror board kind of, and going all the way up to a 4, which is kind of more like, you can think of it like a bounce board, like a you know, pizza box or 4x4 bounce. Beforehand, you know, having only, generally, if you have like a bounce board, you know, white side, shiny side, and then like going to mirrors, it can be a little restricting sometimes, and so having more precise choices can be kind of convenient with this. We don't want something too crazy soft, we do want a little bit of shape.
So it's a really simple light setup, and you know, simplicity is great when we're kind of lighting for a massive space. So let's take a look at our next setup and see what we got going. So at this point, our character has exited this room, and now she's with a flashlight coming, kind of going in this direction, in this room. Talk to me about our plan of attack and our strategy for lighting in this room.
So we have a few lights in this room. We have a rainbow quasar that's kind of just shooting into the ceiling, trying to help bounce it and bring up the ambience a little bit. We have 2 Nova 300s coming through these windows, which hopefully as the sun comes down, we'll be able to get a little bit more directionality out of those, and we'll overall just kind of change the ambience of the room, make it a little bit more, you know, feel the lights more so than everything kind of just spreading around.
Moonlight. How do you recreate moonlight? I think it's something that every DP should know. And one of the things that I lean on is color temperature, the color of the light. I like it to be a little blue, a little cyan even. Whether I do that on a RGB light like these Novas, or whether I do it in camera by changing the white balance to usually around 4500 if the lights are at like a daylight color. So we've got our kind of a backlight, ambient light coming through the windows, our moonlight pushing through. We've got a little bit more supplementary ambient with that quasar bouncing into the ceiling. What's this stuff over here?
We have a 60D with a spotlight mini zoom shooting into another CRLS 3. Same one we had in there, just to kind of, as she walks through here and continues into the next room, just kind of give her something to help separate her from the background a little bit. Not necessarily trying to be, a very strict edge or a very, backlight type thing, more just to kind of help bring her up off the background.
I'll tell you what the Lightbridge does for us is it helps us in so many ways. Our camera is on a 40 mil anamorphic, so we're seeing more wider real estate. So if we were to put a light over here to do essentially what you said is kind of separate a little bit, we'd probably see that stand. But what I love about this Spotlight mini zoom in combination with the Lightbridge is that we can take this, we can move it further back, and because it has a variable beam angle, we can kind of change, how far away this light sits and still get the same effect and not have to sacrifice a light coming from that corner. I think that's just brilliant.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice versus, a lot of times if you have something like that, people might put an aperture, like if this was a Leica, people might put the aperture in there, and if you're doing that, instead of spreading the light at a different angle, you're actually, if you close down the aperture, you're losing that percentage of the light. And so you can still maintain the amount, the full amount of light that this can put out without having, while still shaping it, and it saves you the time it might take to have to run to the truck and get a different lens if it was a Leica. Most often on set, we're going really fast and we just don't have time for those kind of changes.
Also, how are you rigging that up on the ceiling?
So we have a scissor clip up there. A lot of times when you're in like an office building or anywhere really you have this type of grid type ceiling, one of the clips that we use is a scissor clip which just kind of has these two X beams that you loosen one part and they can kind of close down on the little cross beam parts and tightens back up. And it's nice because sometimes, like I personally get a little nervous using those. Even when you put something on there, they wiggle a good bit. There are things you can do to help counteract that, but still in general, the beams aren't that strong. So you don't want to put a lot of weight on them. So it's really nice to have something like this where instead of putting a light up there, which would be significantly heavier, and then you also have to run power and such for it. And anytime you're running power in the ceiling, you got to make sure cords aren't in the shot, so you got to run them super far, and it takes a good bit of time. Versus just having something like this where it's really quick, you can put it up there. The mirrors really aren't that heavy, and so it's very convenient in the sense of, having that feeling of safety. It's sometimes hard to use safety chains on that like you would normally on a lot of other points. So, usually if I have something like that, I just take some sash and I'll kind of do a clove hitch around the actual clip itself onto the beam as well, just so that, it helps a little bit with that shake. So like something like this where it's at an angle and the weight is distributed not directly downwards, it just gives you a little bit of extra safety.
All right, so this is a little bit bigger of a room, but we still it seems like we're kind of following, I'm seeing some similarities between that room, and that's a good thing because again, we're trying to maintain continuity. Talk to me about this setup. What do we got going?
Cool, so we have two more rainbow quasars in here. They're both just rigged up into the ceiling, and we also have another 60D kind of just shooting down at the bookshelf. And the idea with these is, sometimes when someone's walking through like this, it's nice to feel a little bit of a texture and direction change. So having some, quasars like this that are just lined up like that, you'll get the person, you'll have those like overhead reflections in the forehead and the hair and stuff as they walk through a little bit longer.
So it sounds like, yeah, you're almost tracing her path with the shape of the quasars in a sense, so that she's continuously lit through her path.
And one thing I know people get nervous about, there is obviously an issue sometimes when lights get too sourcey, but ones like this where you do have a little bit longer of a time, having those direct reflections of the light in the skin always look nice because you just get, instead of the light just kind of blanketing on the person, you can have that little bit of a highlight in whichever part of the skin or whatever part of the hair directly picks up that reflection.
Yes. And just to remind, again, we're doing a one take, a oneer as they like to call it. And this gives freedom for the actor to kind of move freely in here and the camera to kind of move freely in here without worrying about seeing production in the frame. It just makes movement and blocking a lot easier. Love overhead rigging.
Yeah, and I definitely think in this kind of scenario, if we had a bunch of lights, a lot of times people they're pushing, lights through a 4x or 6x in a small room like this, and that doesn't really make sense. And, in like an actual realistic sense, because if you're walking through an abandoned place, you're not going to have, there's never going to be a 4-foot, 6-foot source of light just blasting somebody.
Yeah.
And so lighting overhead a lot of times I feel like gives a more realistic, natural look. If all of a sudden we're doing the shot and you say maybe I don't want to see this, I want to see the other side of the room, and just you can swap over and it's no big deal and we don't have to spend an hour or two or however long relighting it and making all these adjustments.
So we're in the final landing mark of where our actor is going to end up in this scene. Talk to me about what the lighting setup is in here.
Cool. So this one's a little bit more simple just because it was supposed to kind of, you know, for the most part, from where we're looking this way at the lady, we're following with her. And it's supposed to be a black void. So everything back here will eventually be turned off. And yeah, she's just gonna walk out, and it's supposed to be, you know, kind of a suspenseful, like we don't know what's in the area. So it's just a little controlled top light. It's one of the 60Ds with a softbox on it, and we have a little egg crate on it just to kind of help prevent splashing all around everywhere, especially, you know, with all this white stuff here. If we didn't have that on there, she would just be getting a bunch of return from this, and, you know, all of this could be kind of spreading around the room, and that's not so much what we're looking for.
So towards the end of the landing of the actor's path, she's gonna eventually find a cake. And the cake's gonna be kind of like a clue from the person she's looking for. And we're gonna light it, but I think we have something special in mind for this part of the scene. Talk to me about that.
And up here we have a 60D with the spotlight mini zoom. We chose that one just because same thing as we're worried about with that one. It's just much more controlled, a little bit easier, you know, light to not have to worry about spill as much and can just kind of snipe onto one point. And so this is supposed to be a gag where it's going to be off in the start, and then as she approaches it, we're going to turn the light on. So, you know, just from a phone, it's really easy to turn on and off.
Again, I love overhead lighting, and I love that we're using so many tools to be able to accomplish the same thing. We're kind of showcasing the different types of tools, whether they're quasars, whether they're Lightbridge, whether they're spotlight modifiers, you know, softboxes. We're kind of utilizing everything we have available to us to accomplish the same thing. And so it's awesome, the versatility that these tools give us. Sweet, let's jump in. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Let's go.
Happy birthday to you.
Oh man.
Happy birthday
Are you
to
serious?
you. Happy birthday, dear Kevin. Stun. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you guys. Guys, that was so much fun. I loved how that turned out. You should have seen the crew looking at the client monitor. We were so stoked as that was playing through. I want to know, how would you go about lighting a bigger space? Let me know, comment down below on how you would do that for your chance to win a B7C. Comment down below. Please follow CRLS, Lightbridge, Aputure, myself. All of our socials will be down in the description. I can't wait to see you guys next time. See you later. Where it's going to be really dark, not a lot of lights are on, it's going to be nighttime. She's going to be kind of... I think I just ate a fly. Oh no! I'll do what it takes for performing at film school. All right.